Let's all stand together, have a word of prayer, and then say the Pledge of Allegiance together. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, tonight for your mercy. The Word of God says that your mercies are new to us every morning, and we experience those. We live in those mercies. And Lord, you've been merciful to our nation. That's why we're together tonight, because we want to extend those mercies, Lord, forward, Lord, into the future. And so we pray tonight that you'll give us the wisdom to do that, the understanding. Lord, we go with limited information because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And so we need to lean on you and depend on you every step of the way. Lord, none of this is done by our hand. It's all done by your hand. We thank you for the rights that we have, that you've given to us. Man didn't give them to us, and we're not going to let man take them away from us. And so we thank you and give you praise for every person that's here tonight. Let tonight be a blessing. Let tonight be an eye-opener, I pray. And we just thank you again, Lord, for your mighty presence. We pray in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Born and unborn.
Well, tonight should be interesting. I'll give a little bit of an introduction. We've had a victory this week. Our library board, and Chuck Butler, I believe, is in the back. He's on the library board, and we just want to thank you all for protecting our children. They changed the collection development policy. John Baer's wife, Sage, is the chairperson of that board, and we thank her, too, for their diligence. They worked very, very hard, John will tell you, and Chuck will tell you they worked very hard. So we're very appreciative of all that they've done for Campbell County, and it will be remembered. It will be. And so we just want to say thank you for passing that collection development policy that stops the obscene books from being put on the children's shelves. They'll be put in a special area.
Yeah.
And so we thank
Taken
them for that. So that's one thing that's going on. I'm giving you a little bit of a timeline here to what we've been going through and how it's all going to tie in with tonight. I believe tonight's going to be, like I said, an eye-opener. And so we thank the Lord for his goodness. By the way, this library policy, we all worked on it for about 2 years. Actually, 2 years to the day it was passed. And so it took a little while. And we have Kelly McCreary here. We thank the county commissioners, too, for their support in this. Also, very important. They kind of got the ball rolling. And actually, we had a county commissioner call us up on the telephone and say, help! And we said, yes, sir. We were the Minutemen, so we came. Now, on the other hand, as wonderfully as we can speak of the county commissioners, we have the opposite reaction of our Gillette City Council. They passed a hate crime ordinance. It was a 4-3 vote on the final reading, and I like this. I think this was Scott Clem that actually painted under We're Woke. He did it on his computer, okay? All right. But I thought you'd like to see that, because we looked at the sign and I said, Scott, are you thinking what I'm thinking? He says, yes, and I'm going to go home and do it. And we didn't even have to communicate much. So he did the meme. We also need to contact Mayor Shea Lundvall, and he's not yet decided what he's going to do. At least as far as I know, he hasn't decided. I've emailed him to tell him to veto it and not to sign it. He can do both, and I think it would be a good statement for him to make. I don't know if anybody thinks differently about that, but I certainly think it would be a step in the right direction for him to make his wishes known. Of course, he's articulated that, and two of the other commissioners, or excuse me, councilmen, I always get them mixed up. Councilman
McClellan,
not McClellan. no.
Montgomery,
Mon-
Rose.
I always forget.
Which one?
Tim Karsrud's name. I always forget Tim. Tim and also Trish Simonson. Thank you. Help me out here because it's after 7 o'clock. It's my nap time. And so here's his information. We need to take a picture of that, and then you could just email him and tell him that. But like I said, I emailed him today. And so this is ongoing right now. And then also we need to contact all of them, or at least the 4 that voted for the hate crimes ordinance. And we need to email them and tell them to repeal. We need to start saying that. Repeal the hate crimes ordinance. And we're going to be actively doing this in the coming weeks and months. They get a little irritated when we start doing FOIA requests and things like that. It's visibly on their faces. And so we're going to continue. And it's very important that we continue this. We're not going to let this die. And you're going to see why tonight. Lyle and Ben Decker and Susan Sisti are going to come up and share some things from a little conference that we went to. Not we, I didn't go, but Susan went and some of the others in here. It's out of this activist handbook that we're going to look at tonight. As a matter of fact, I think I have there's always a slide for something like this. We're good. You're not seeing what I'm seeing, so that's good. The Activist Handbook, How to Fight Back in Your Community. And it was perfect timing that Lyle connected with Tom DeWeese, who is a John Birch speaker, and he prepared this, and other legislators in our state actually use this activist book and have been using it for a while. And so we're going to talk more and more about this and how to deal with this city council issue, because a lot of it has to do with our city council. We know that right now with the hate crimes law on the books, they could get more funding, lots of grants open to them, and we know that. We've heard from other legislators about that. And so it was perfect timing that this man came to our community. We're going to continue with some more education as we go along. So with that being said, and I've got a little problem here on my screen, and this is a gentleman, Tom DeWeese, that spoke at, and I believe that was, Lyle, when was that?
Wednesday.
Last Wednesday at New Life Wesleyan, and we had a few people attend that, so they're going to speak a little bit more about this tonight. So I'm going to have Susan come up first and give you some information that's very, very important.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I was able to attend this meeting. It was through the John Birch Society, and it was very short notice, but we did have a few people there, and I am so glad I went. Is this better?
Yes.
And I wanted to share what I took from the meeting. I kind of learned what's going on at City Council, and it was stunning information. In the Activist Handbook, it says, sustainable development and economic development. It's code for a policy designed to transform human society, essentially eliminating individual life decisions and replacing them with top-down, one-size-fits-all government control. And we see that. It's designed to look like local development programs. And they are so good at making us think that they're thinking of all this themselves, and they're not. But it's like the proverbial frog that goes into the warm water and it slowly boils and he never realizes it. Most Americans fail to see the rise in this government dominance until it's too late. And they hide their agenda through newspeak, and they deny Agenda 2030 by saying it's a conspiracy theory. And I've talked to so many people and they say, I've never heard of Agenda 2030 or anything. And they can't be that uninformed, you know. But that's one of the things, is they'll say it's a conspiracy or they've never heard of it. And on the radio interview, that's exactly what the moderator said to you. Conspiracy theory. But it is. It's been around a long time. Okay, so sustainable programs. Who's heard about sustainability? Everybody. I don't think it's got anything about sustainability. It's about control. All roads lead to UNESCO, and the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, are targeting local politicians, small towns, our town. And they lead them into contracts for grant money. Senator McEwen calls it pennies from heaven. And I know just want to say our commissioners are always looking at what strings are attached to these offers, and I really respect them for that. City Council's not doing that. They like the strings and the pennies from heaven, but they lure them into contracts for roundabouts, bike paths that go nowhere, beautification projects, woke ordinances, economic development, and master plans, which, according to this expert, he says all of the master plans for the cities that they're working on turn into like the perfect communist community down the road. And they're steering them into that. And I have to read all of this, but it's really been a mind opener. Here's 3 of the programs they have. One's called Heartland 2050. It's a sustainable development being pushed in California, and they have what's called a complete street. And I'll read a little bit of that. It's an edict that cars must share the road with bicycles, and they call it traffic calming. And so they're going to put large speed bumps in the way so you can't go very fast, and the bikes will be all around you at the same time. And a lot of this is because they think that we spend too much money on automobiles, and so we just need to walk everywhere. I think they had what's called a 5-minute city in Europe, or was it called a
15-minute?
15-minute, yeah. And that's what they want, but that didn't work out very well. But in California, they're really pushing it. And these traffic circles, too, are a menace to emergency vehicles, but they don't care. And all across the nation, they're pushing these plans for smart cities, and communities are building residential areas without parking lots. And we're not seeing that here yet, but that's going on in the bigger cities. All designed to discourage interest in driving, but we like our trucks in Wyoming. And San Francisco, they're eliminating parking spaces, and they closed down major streets. In New York, they built more than 400 miles of new bike lanes and closed roads. So it goes on and on. So that's the heartland. And here's one called What Works Cities. And this is a NGO operation, provides all training, data, information needed to guide your city into the right program. But who's it right for? We don't get a say in this, and our citizens aren't consulted. And at the top, it says which one is in Gillette, so there'll be a quiz. The next one is transition towns. NGOs guide the city to disengage from an oil-based or other energy source societies. Yeah. Yes, John.
Well, currently, Rusty Bell, our previous county commissioner,
Bingo.
is operating on a $3.5 million grant from the Biden administration to do exactly that.
To do that.
That's the purpose of his job right now.
And do you know the NGO behind that?
Well, that $3.5 million is being run through the College Foundation right now.
Wow.
Interesting. We're learning here. And let's go to the next slide. And the good Lord brought this man to us a week after I found this on the internet, after our former administrator left. And this just really gets me riled up. Our former administrator, Kim, who left, he had done his dirty work. He's going on to the next town. He spends 2 years here, 2 years there. And this is what he did while he was in Gillette. This is from the TacomaWeekly.com. You can take a picture of this. According to the city's announcement of Kim's hiring in his role as city manager in Gillette, he assembled a team that that would transition a coal-dependent community away from fossil fuels. Has that team been disbanded yet? He also spearheaded an ethics case study, and that was after the mayor was, who was disgraced, left. And they're doing all this deceiving us. And so he did this case study on rebuilding public trust while managing city operations and keeping public policy on track. And he led a team that would onboard, hire more minority and female officers than any other time in the department's history. I want police officers hired by their merit, their strength and ability. I don't want people hired by the color of their skin and their sex in such an important role. Is this team still in place? And next one, and in his city leadership positions and as a board member of the International Network of Asian Public Administrators, Mr. Kim has a record of leading out on anti-racist systems, transformations, and advancing diversity in local government employment. Paulie said his firsthand knowledge of the South Puget Sound region will add great value and allow him to hit the ground running. My question is, why didn't any city council member let the public know that this was going on? What, for 4 years? Our previous mayor hired him. Not one of them have said anything. Or sometimes I wonder if they know.
Yeah. Right.
So, I don't know, but you can look up the INAPA, and their claim to fame is diversity and inclusion, and they support all types of globalist entities. So from what I'm learning here, our former city administrator was a deep state NGO-connected person who did a lot of damage, and we heard from someone, a city council member, that's going to take years to find out all the damage he did. So now we know a little bit more on how to protect our city. So thank you for your attention, and please buy the book, and let's all prepare for the next step to protect Gillette. Thank you.
The team, this was interesting. We did a FOIA request and found out that there was quite a discussion with a team before they made the decision to do the hate crimes ordinance. So we actually found that out, and they were very irritated with us at the last city council meeting. They were really bothered that we did a FOIA about that. But this is what we're going to have to do moving forward if we want to clean up the city council.
Kim was pushing it, we found out through a FOIA.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to ask Ben Decker to come on up here. I believe I've got your picture up there. See? You can preach under your picture.
Okay. Hey, so anyways, I think we have a daunting task. We are, I think a lot of you already know this, but this stuff is funded by Bill Gates, George Soros, Klaus Schwab, and they fund all these NGOs, and their goals are massive things like lowering the population, transitioning away from fossil fuels, sustainable development, and you will own nothing and be happy. That's kind of what they're going for. And it seems like it's going to be difficult for us to fight against this. Like we don't have that kind of money. We don't have that kind of organization. So what do we do? What do we got to do? What can we do about that? Well, it's in other places, and I think we've already started doing some of this, but we actually need people at every single council meeting, every single commissioner meeting. If you can go down to the legislature during sessions, we need people to do that. We need people at every library board meeting, and we need to be well informed. We need to know more than the people in political positions know, and we need to be ready to confront them on everything that they're wrong on. Like, just to give some examples, Heidi Gross said, well, it might be freedom of speech, but I think we're better than that at the city council meeting. So we need someone to call her out on that immediately. Like, no, we're not better than the Constitution. This is put in place by geniuses, and it's what's kept our country great for so long. So we need to attack back on that right away. Someone in the public comments got up and said that, well, it's unconstitutional, but slavery was in the Constitution. Well, that's not true. So we need someone to come up after them and say, slavery's not in the Constitution. You don't know what you're talking about. Go read the Constitution. So all these things we need to have in place, well organized, well researched, so that we can see their plans and work to stop them. Hopefully before they get into place, but they're already working on all this stuff. So that Jim Ford and Rusty Bell's, their solution is to transition away from coal. I went to one of their presentations and it was pretty unbelievable, but they get people to go along with it because they can present it in a good way, in a positive way that makes you like think, oh, that's a good idea. And really, if you look just beneath the surface, it's really just a pile of garbage. So what they're proposing is that we're going to do carbon capture and sequestration, and somehow magically we're going to make money off of getting the carbon. Like they're going to pay us to take the carbon dioxide, and then we're going to sequester it, and then we're going to make money off of selling it too. So every which way we're going to make money, and there's just going to be so much money in this industry, and we're going to be making all these things out of carbon. But that's not really the way economies work. It's like, if it's worth something, the people that have it are going to sell it to the people, not pay us to take it. So there's obvious flaws in their proposals, and we need to ask them about that. So I asked the governor, hey, when you're putting a fee onto our energy production to pay for this, isn't that going to make us less competitive against other states that don't have these similar fees? And he made up a pretty sounding answer. And afterwards he said, that's a really good question. I'm going to have to do some more research on, see if it's the economic impacts of it. But I don't even believe that he's going to do that. He's just trying to present himself positively to me.
They've been doing this for years, right? And sucking money out of the county.
Yeah.
And never coming up with a product. So that should be called out onto them. Where's your product?
Yeah.
What is the product?
Right, and the energy capital economic development that's funded partially by the county, partially by the city, they've kind of got some interesting things going on. When they're asked to show what their product is or what their results are, they say, well, look at Visionary, look at L&H. Well, those things were started before they even existed, so that's an example of what we can do without them. Like, we don't need, the economic development, it's almost an oxymoron to be a nonprofit economic development place. That seems wrong to me. And then to further fund it by government funding, it seems weird. But figure out what you're actually super interested in and willing to research and willing to fight against. I know Patty Junick, I don't think she's here today, but she needs help with, she's really working on voter fraud issues. So there's a lot of different things to get involved in, but we need more people involved all the time, or else there's not much of a chance we're going to lose our country. So, thanks.
Do you understand this carbon sequestration stuff?
Oh, yes. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I can answer some questions about that. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, apparently they take the carbon dioxide out of the air and they put it underground and seal it off, or I suppose. And there's trying to figure out how to make different things like carbon fiber or carbon nanotubes or different things out of it. I know we have Atlas Carbon here, which is Jim Ford's business, which makes, it's actually pretty interesting. It makes filters out of the carbon, like activated carbon filters, and then he sells that for, I don't know, $1,500 a ton or whatever to people that make filters.
But do they take land through eminent domain?
In South Dakota, they are currently taking land through eminent domain to get the carbon pipelines. And Christie Nome's not stopping them, which I think's odd. So I don't know if here they ran them through federal lands or if they also took private land too to do that. But
So what are we gonna leave for the trees to breathe?
exactly, and well, you know, in greenhouses they pump carbon dioxide into the greenhouse to make plants grow
Exactly.
faster. So
That's what they make
that's what
oxygen.
it's going to do in the air. And you know, you look at the quantities of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's very, way much lower than people imagine that are all into this stuff. So, but they are, with this stuff, they are very much against private property rights. They want you to own nothing and be happy, and it's done through all different ways. Like we saw it in the lockdowns when they were taking rental properties and making it to where you couldn't evict people, things like that. So they're just doing it little by little with the plan of socialism, which leads to communism. So one other thing I want to say is if we're at these meetings, don't get up there and say, this is from the United Nations and this is George Soros or this is, you know, don't make bold claims like that because they're not going to listen to anything else we say. Because we can see it, but they can't. I think some of them actually don't know. Like they just see it as, oh, this is a great idea because it's packaged pretty. And I don't think they, like some of them are involved and know what they're involved in. Some of them are just going along trying to do their best. So those are the ones we can convince and get back on our side if we're careful about how we do it.
So we have a modern fifth estate.
A modern what?
Fifth estate. That's a group of people that worked during the war to counteract what we were doing here to beat the Nazis and
Yeah.
it was called the Fifth Estate. Newspapers, politicians, company people. So now you're telling me that that has come here now, to this time.
Yeah.
That's
It's newspapers, politicians, everyone's on board with it. That's why it's difficult to get news that's favorable to our side. They're all bought out. Mark?
In the news this morning, George Soros is going to be retiring even more, handing over control of his family empire to his 37-year-old son, Alexander, who's reputedly even more liberal than his father is.
Really?
And is going to support all the Democrats in the election.
Yeah.
I'm confused. When you talk about carbon capture, are you talking about carbon dioxide?
Yeah, so they're taking out of the exhaust of the burning the coal, they're taking the carbon dioxide, and then magically we're going to make a lot of money off of every which way you can think of.
So, did you see in South Dakota, the South Dakota one, they want to run it through a pipeline and put it in a big cavern in North Dakota.
Yeah.
It's just their bogus stories.
Yeah, it's because of global warming. They think that's going to heat up the atmosphere, and then we're going to have rising sea levels. Everyone's going to drown, and
when I get up to speak, I'm going to introduce all of you to a book that was written by an author, reviewed by Rick Wright on his radio program at KIML. It explains everything in there, and it has charts from National Weather Service, and it has the truth. I'll share the name with you. You can order the book. It will floor you about carbon dioxide and how friendly and how we need it. And yes, there is money to be made, but I'll explain that.
okay. And, well, it seems to me like there's money to be made, and I might be wrong on this, but it seems to me like there's money to be made temporarily until they get coal out of the picture, and then I don't know that they're gonna be here for us at that point.
Well, I'll explain that also, because
Okay.
there's some other avenues to produce carbon dioxide rather than capturing it.
Yeah.
Ben, I'm sorry, you mentioned attending the different board meetings and council meetings. Where is that information available? Are there websites
Yeah,
that
so
outline the date, times, and locations?
City of Gillette has a website that, for the council meetings. The county website has library board meetings, county commissioner meetings. There's Wild Leg that will have the legislative sessions in Cheyenne. And then, yeah, it's all on different websites depending on which.
What about the school?
Oh, yeah, school board, Campbell County School District has a website, and that'll show, they're postponed for the summer, but when the school is in session again, Campbell County School District will have school board meetings throughout the school year. Kelly?
As a commissioner, one of the things I see happening on these economic development things is that they get a partial grant. And so the county is partnered with them on a partial grant to where the county ends up paying either 25, 30, or 50% of this matching grant. And everybody thinks it's just too good of a deal to pass up. And I can see where we're going to have to be more careful.
Definitely, and I've seen that at the city where we're spending money on things that they shouldn't be spending money on because of that same situation. We get half the grant from the government, or from the federal government, so we're doing programs that we shouldn't be. When I worked for the city in the summer, they actually told me to take longer breaks, to sit down and stop working so hard. And they said, if you get this all cleaned up this year, we won't get a grant next year. So that, I don't know.
I was just gonna say, the Chamber of Commerce might have all of those meetings on their calendar.
Oh, good point. That reminded me of something actually. Interestingly, the Chamber of Commerce and the Board of Realtors are also against private property rights, which doesn't really make sense. Like the Board of Realtors, if it were to accomplish its agenda, they'd work themselves out of a job, basically. They're not going to be realtors anymore, but kind of weird. And I don't think they know that they're involved in that either. It's just sort of they're really good at packaging it to where it looks like something you'd want.
How would they make carbon dioxide evil when it is part of life in this world? And carbon monoxide, which is just one oxygen and carbon, is the one that's bad. Carbon dioxide is actually needed.
So I think the answer to that is that ultimately it's sin. So it doesn't have to be logical. Like, it's the same thing as how can they say men can get pregnant, in my mind. It's like the things that they're doing don't have to be logical. We're not going to figure them out. It's, I mean, all we can do is point to the truth. Chuck.
If just to show you, if you look up carbon dioxide in Wikipedia, it does not say in one iota one of the things that it is necessary for life. It goes on and on and on. It's got page after page after page of how it causes global warming, how it traps gas, how it does. It doesn't say anywhere in there, that it is needed for life.
That's wild.
Well, it says here, CO2 is the primary carbon source for life on Earth.
In your
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia mine says it's a trace gas, and that's it.
You better save Joseph.
That's it.
Yes.
They want to decrease food production on Earth. They want
Oh,
to
yeah.
put us into, food shortage worldwide. So that's part of their agenda too. And then the climate change. Look at the chemtrails. What's in the chemicals they're spraying on everybody, and that destroys our forests and our plankton.
It's kind of interesting. That
Oxygen
sounds
producing?
like, to people that haven't looked into that at all, that sounds very conspiratorial too. Like a lot of this stuff does, so we got to be careful how we approach it. But I know there was a guy in 1930, I think it was, that said there was a reservoir by a town that had a drought, and he said, "I'll charge." I don't even remember how much money it was, but he said, "If I can fill up that reservoir, will you pay me however much money?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, not because you won't be able to do it." Well, he pumped some, I don't know what, into the air, made it rain, and it rained so much it overflowed and broke the dam. So that was way back then, and it's kind of interesting how they can do
In
that
high
stuff.
school, they told me in 1972 that by 1990, my place in the Bronx would have been underwater by 2 feet.
Oh yeah.
In 1972, they were saying all that from the beginning, for a long time.
Yeah, and there's other problems too. There's like one of the reasons it seems like Manhattan is sea level rise is because the buildings are built on soggy land and it's sinking. So, I mean, how much of that accounts for what they're seeing in increased flooding and stuff?
Manhattan is built on something called Manhattan shits, which is it's a stone, a rock so strong, dynamite doesn't work that well. It has to be broken up differently. So Manhattan, no,
Not sinking?
it's not going to sink.
Okay, that's bad information, man.
Has anyone looked into whether these guys have entered into the public school system? Because if they, I could swear they have, and if they have, we can't live.
Oh yeah, they have.
School choice.
They've totally taken over the public school system. I mean, that's why people are believing all this stuff, because they hear it their whole lives, you know. A kid will believe whatever you tell them.
Yeah, exactly.
And John, the NGOs touch everything.
Oh yeah,
So,
they're involved in everything.
that was pretty well. But thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, these NGOs, they cover, you know, they run cover.
Well, these NGOs, in Tom DeWeese's book, Activists for Handbook on How to Fight Back in Your Community, it has a list in this book. You've got to order this book. It's $35. It's well worth the money. You can go to American Policy Center and order it. And then I think we have it online also. I think the top 12 NGOs are listed in this book. Now, understand something about these NGOs. These are special interest groups, and they're not the ones that are formulating the UN plan. They're the ones that the UN has indoctrinated. There's more steps and layers in this than we understand. So they believe that they have the answer for their special interest, and they're then coming into our communities. And they're telling our city councilmen and county commissioners, and city councilmen anyway, and they're telling them that we're going to come in and we're going to call them a bunch of commies, that we're going to be telling them lies, and to get used to it and be aware of it and be ready for it. So they already know that they're going to have a barrage of people that are going to come into council meetings and call them names. This is orchestrated, people. As far as all of the global warming goes, and Tom DeWeese points it out in this book, I think there's 17 agendas for UN for taking over the world. And the last one, the 17th one, is global warming, the very last one. As far as carbon dioxide goes, inconvenient facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. And this is written by Gregory Whitestone, and he was interviewed by Vic Wright about 4 years ago on Vic's radio show. I happened to be listening to it, and I ordered the book. Now, the charts and the information that are put in this book by Gregory Whitestone, or Wrightstone, excuse me,
is a lot of this information comes from the National Weather Service and NOAA. It's right from the people, it's right from the organizations that are telling us what's going on. So if you get online and you look at what carbon dioxide is doing, it's different information online than what this book has. Gregory pulls out the facts. Let me show you something. It's kind of hard to. So he has charts in there, color charts, that are showing us what's going on and the truth about what's going on. Oh, you'll hold the mic, okay. And I think Ben was talking about, okay, sources of man-made CO2 emissions: coal 43%, gas flaring 1%, cement 5%. Making of cement, by the way, creates 5% CO2. Oil 34%, natural gas 18%. And then I was online today and I was looking at who the violator is, the #1 violator in the world for emissions of CO2. And online it says the US, but it's not. It's actually China. And the US is, China's 30%, US is 15. We're half of what China is. So all this stuff online, if you read it online, it's true, right? But anyway, Gregory did a good job. He's got charts. This stuff is incredible. I was at all when I was listening to him talking to Vic. By the way, when Tom DeWeese, I could stand here and talk for 4 hours tonight. Okay. So when Tom DeWeese was in town last week, I had arranged for, thank you. You're welcome. He had arranged to do an interview with Tom DeWeese, Vic Wright had. And I called him and I had him go to a website and look at Tom DeWeese. And he said, yeah, I can interview him. I'd like to do that. But he says, I want you to know I'm a moderate. And I'm going to pick on him. I am going to pick on him. So you tell him to be ready for that. Tom DeWeese walks in, sits down in the studio, and they start talking, and Vic is trying to pick a fight. And Tom DeWeese is answering the information so accurately that Vic couldn't pick a fight with him. He said, oh, I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. And he says, I guess we don't have a fight. Good. So Tom is kind of an interesting guy. He's not, I wouldn't say flamboyant or colorful or anything like that, but he knows his facts. The guy is good. So what happened? Those bullet points, did you put those up? They're right there. Green Deal. This is the driving force to convince humans to believe carbon is eventually going to kill all of mankind. I could spend 4 hours on this. Oh, that's what I said just now. And that's what I was thinking this morning when I was going through the book. So when it comes to carbon dioxide, and in Gregory's book, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere right now are 417 parts per million. There was a time on Earth when carbon dioxide parts per million were 2,600. They don't tell you that. Plants, by the way, cease to live at 150 parts per million. We're on the low end of the scale for carbon dioxide. And he goes in extensively in the book to talk about how, obviously, they pump carbon dioxide into greenhouses to make plants grow. There's a gentleman here in town that's got a couple of greenhouses. Jordan. Yeah. He does that. He brings in bottled carbon dioxide, puts it in the greenhouse, sprays it in there, and the plants go crazy. Because they're converting that carbon dioxide to oxygen in photosynthesis, is what they're doing. So, when you're looking at carbon dioxide levels, they've actually taken core samples out of glaciers, and Antarctica is a good place to do it because the ice there is the oldest on Earth. And they've taken core samples of bubbles in the ice, 2,600 parts per million. Now, where in the heck did that come from?
Volcanoes.
Huh?
Volcanoes.
It could have. but it was there. So we're at 417 parts per million now. And they say that the industrial complexes in the world, China, US, Europe, which by the way, Europe is actually doing away with a lot of the regulations. Europe is opening up their coal-fired
That's right.
power plants. Yes, they are. And Germany, I have a daughter-in-law, it's married to my oldest son, they no longer allow soy products in their foods. They no longer allow high fructose corn syrup because they found out it don't work. What? Germany.
What tell you about?
Yeah. And Ellen is telling me that they don't eat grain-fed beef there. They don't eat it. It's all grass-fed. Which, by the way, I had a wonderful thick steak that I cut. I killed the cow, aged it and cut it up. I had a steak about this thick. It was a rib steak. It was green. It was grass-fed, and it was wonderful.
Yummy.
It was great. And the stuff costs more in the store than grain-fed. Figure that one out. So we're actually drinking the Kool-Aid in this country and a lot of other countries, and this book will explain a lot of what's going on. So what we're going to be doing this summer, we're going to be working with Tom DeWeese, and we're going to establish a game plan. What is that online newspaper? Is it Cowboy State Daily?
Yeah.
Okay. We know some people there. And we're going to pick out some of the elected officials that are behaving not so good. We're going to find out the skinny on them, and we're going to start pumping County 17, Cowboy State Daily, and some other rags about what's going on. Do you realize that most of the people in this town don't know any of this stuff? They don't. But if you could bring it to them in a certain way and present it in a certain way professionally without name calling and show them what's going on and let them know. As an example, everybody believes that carbon's bad. Nobody knows about what they're putting in our food. They don't know. So when they're talking about the UN wanting to cut back on the food production, but they also want to cut back on the population. So why do you need a whole bunch of food when you're cutting back on the population? So what we need to do is get an organized method in which to deliver. We have the resources. We have all of the information out there. We can buy it in books, not necessarily believe what's online. We can buy it in books. We have resources in humans that know what's going on. We've got Dr. Frank out there talking, and he's doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing what's happening to our ex-president. He just got indicted again.
Yeah.
I didn't look at his ratings today.
He's still up. He's still up.
He's still up. Yeah.
Just not publicly.
After they indicted,
It did go up?
Yes.
How many points?
I never paid any attention to that.
Oh, I gotta go in and look at it tomorrow, and see what happened. But we put together a systematic way of delivering information to the people in our city. And Tom DeWeese, by the way, said that we start locally. We start with county, with city council, especially city council, and then we work out. That's what we do. So we get our information, we see how people are voting. I understand that city council, they're not, what are they, not?
Nonpartisan.
They're nonpartisan, that's the word I was looking for. But it really doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. All we have to do is start bringing the information to the people. I don't know how many people look at County 17 and I gotta look at that, Cowboy State Daily on a regular basis. I look at Cowboy State Daily on a regular basis now. They've got a lot of fun stuff that I can read and whatnot. So we just need to get to know some of these reporters that are working for these outlets and get the information to the people.
Follow the money.
Follow the money, that's right. With the hate crime ordinance, and it's an ordinance, there's no teeth in it. I don't know how they could prosecute anybody for it. You could probably, for those people that voted to enact that city ordinance for hate crime, if you followed them around in the course of a day, I'm sure that they would find some derogatory statement about some race, gender, or something.
They already have.
We all do it, jokingly. I don't know if you've ever heard a pull-out joke. Yes, sir.
3 times.
You do know that Cowboy State Daily tends to protect the rhinos.
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
so make sure you know that.
Right, but that's okay because you can change the hearts and minds of people, because look what the UN is doing with NGOs and what they're doing to our local governments. It's proof that it can happen.
What's the name of the guy that has a blog in Sheridan?
David Iverson,
Yeah,
Capital State Politics.
yeah, he's really good.
He's really good, yes, and there's several of them across the country. Exposing the NGO forces operating behind the scenes. And these are non-government organizations is what they are. I wonder if I can find that.
The list?
The list.
Yes, I marked
You know
it.
where it's at?
It's on page 75. AARP, United Way, Salvation Army,
All right.
Lions Club.
Here, let me read these to you. NGOs, AARP. I haven't been a member of AARP for a long
What's
time.
the other one?
There's a conservative one also.
Amen.
Amen, yeah.
Get this, Council of Churches is an NGO. Yes. Greenpeace International, Humane Society of the United States, American Bar Association.
Lawyers.
Yeah. Lions Club, Planned Parenthood, that's no surprise. United Cities and Local Governments. American Heart Association, Advocates for Human Rights, American Diabetes Association, Chamber of Commerce, American Cancer Society, American Civil Liberties Union. We know they're liberal anyway. American Conservative Union, Climate Institute, American Human Rights Council, United Way. Yes.
Are there any good ones?
What is the organization that rings the bell at Christmas time?
Salvation.
Salvation Army.
Salvation Army.
That's,
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually
Are they
told
in
me,
there?
Yes.
they told me,
actually,
they told my wife something. She could tell you.
No, they, last year, there was the Salvation Army chairman or something made a comment about we need to be less white. And when I was supposed to ring bells last year, I called her up and I said, I'm not gonna do it if that's what this organization is gonna be about. She said, oh no, that's not it, he didn't mean it that way, I'll have somebody call you and
Yeah.
all this. I said, he said it, so he meant it.
So Salvation Army is in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. United Way, Climate Action Network, American Planning Association, YMCA, Association for Integrated Sustainable Development, Initiatives Association for Promotion of Sustainable Development. But that's all of what UN is about, under the guise of food production, doing away with cows so we can't have a nice steak, putting stuff in our foods that we don't understand we should not be eating. Let's see, Association of Sustainable Community Development. Oh, by the way, what is the program that the city has going on? Somebody mentioned that earlier. It's some sort of development plan.
I'm sure they
They're
have
gonna
a
be-
master development.
They
plan.
do.
They got a special meeting tomorrow. It's a master plan for the city. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that it's but likely related to all this stuff. And
It ties back to sustainability.
When is it?
Are
Yeah.
you going?
It's
Yeah.
probably
Let me
the
know.
Main Street program through the Wyoming Business Council.
It's like a 5-year plan.
It's probably the Main Street
only killed
program
23
through the
women.
Wyoming Business Council.
Could be.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think so.
So,
Did you get something else?
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce, United Cities and Local Governments, Salvation Army, American Heart Association, Center for Sustainable Development, Earth Institute at Columbia University, ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainable. Tom mention that one? I think he did.
Probably did, that's a big
Yeah.
one.
International Society of Doctors for the Environment, the Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund for Nature, Worldwide Fund for Nature. It's listed twice. I'm not sure why. So, some of the others, National League of Cities, National Governors Association. By the way, WHAM, Wyoming Association of Municipalities, another one. I had the pleasure of going to that in the 80s when I was a city councilman. I went to one annual state meeting and never went back. While we were there, they were talking about getting as many government grants as you can. Get all that money, because it's free, you know, you gotta get that money. You just gotta get it. We went back to the next city councilman. Now, I was 24 years old as a city councilman, and I told the mayor and councilman, I said, this is ridiculous. But it's free money, they said. It's free. And I said, but who's gonna maintain all this free money when it's all built? You're building all this stuff. Where are we gonna get the money to maintain it? Oh, we'll just get some more grants. There's gotta be some, well, just as an example, when I was a city councilman, the superintendent of schools came over from Sundance, wanted to build Moorcroft a brand new high school. Should have seen the plans. It was a castle. I'm 24 years old and I said, no, I'm not endorsing it. And the mayor said, I can't believe you're saying that. Why would you not let them build that? Here, we're getting this incredibly fancy high school. And I looked at the superintendent of schools and I said, how about you build us a rectangle building and buy us, or get us some teachers so we can get kids the hell out of here?
Sure.
Yeah, give them an education. And they got the rectangle building, that's what's sitting over there now, because a 24-year-old said no.
It's still a big building.
It's a nice school, but they brought in teachers. The superintendent of schools said, but we spent $100,000 on design and engineering on this building and you're turning it down. I said, I'm not turning it down, I'm not endorsing it. So what did the rest of the council do? They didn't endorse it either because I wouldn't. I'm a 24-year-old girl in her 50s. But you gotta take a stand, but you have to do it correctly. You have to make sense of what you're saying. And they built that school, but they brought in teachers. There is a graduate from Moorcroft that went to college. She's a major in the Coast Guard.
Nice.
Nice, and numerous teachers that went off to some pretty decent, one went to Dickinson State College, which is a conservative college. But there were a lot of kids that came out of Moorcroft after that, they brought teachers in and they taught academics, and they got the heck out of that town. Yeah. Oh, I gotta wrap this. Yes, sir.
The reason I'm focused on the public schools is because, start over. The reason I'm focused on public schools is because over the years I've come to realize that a position that's been reached irrationally, you can't argue for that by using reason. And you can try that any day of the week. You can't reason with a lot of these people. And a good example of that is like the borders, right? Who would vote for a government that's going to open the borders? And we can see the results of that now. That's just one example. I mean, the perversions that are being taught in the schools. And if you try to reason with these people, if you try to take facts to them, they just don't get it.
So you actually make enemies out of them. Yeah. But one thing we can do, and Tom DeWeese pointed this out, and I'm going to let you all go here in a minute, but he said, what's wrong with getting an idea of the people that we elect to run the government and the ones that are being naughty? Why not print up 1,000 flyers and walk into businesses and say, can I set these here like Hugh Bennett does with anybody's autos? and let people take them as they want to. We have the resources, we just don't have the money, but we have the resources.
Are all city council elected?
Yes.
All of them?
Well, unless somebody
Some were
resigns and
appointed by
then
them.
they
And he's
appoint.
appointed.
It
Yeah,
has to be elected if they want to.
Right, but
Right.
those who are appointed, they don't have any, they don't care for them.
They're appointed by the other council members.
and I think you wanted to say a few words.
Yeah,
You've got about,
that was my question. Does John have any news to give us that about his Diane?
Thank you.
Thank you
all.
Thank you, Lyle.
Thank you, Question was, is there any news out of Cheyenne? Well, there won't be any good news coming out of Cheyenne this time of year. I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you to this group for discovering the issue with the books and sticking to it. That encouraged my wife to do what she did, and Chuck to do what he did to get that development policy changed. And that's a real victory, folks. I mean, that's a long-term solution to a problem. I know the county commissioners at one point just wanted the books moved. Well, if you move the books, there's 12 more coming to replace the one that they moved out of the way. So this policy should really help that. And that's a victory. And, you know, you all really need to celebrate that and pat yourselves on the back for accomplishing that. I do want to say this. The other side, it's very interesting how vitriolic they've become over this time. And that vitriol is pointing a lot of times at my wife and at Chuck and at Chelsea.
For sure.
But also at you. The thing is, in the end, we've got to work together. We've got to live together with those people.
Right.
And I understand, I feel it often when they are vitriolic toward my wife. It's frustrating, it's angering, but in the end, we've got to put that away, folks, because we won, and we've got now an opportunity to move forward in that arena. There are many other arenas, and I'm sure you guys are thinking about what next, and I encourage you to continue doing that. You know, we've got to fight to get this country back to where it should be. And, you know, our founding fathers said many, many times, this Constitution is only good for moral and religious people. And that's the problem. We're running up against people who are not moral or religious, okay? And so our Constitution is what we're losing. But we're seeing some real serious common sense issues when we have our schools doing things for our children that shouldn't be happening. And it's pervasive, folks. So at the state level, you know, if you go and if anybody follows me and watches the Chip and Bear show and the videos that I do, some time ago I came to the conclusion that CRT is in our schools. Whether we take the curriculum out and don't have CRT curriculum, our teachers have been educated in CRT long before they got there. And they don't even realize it. It comes right off the tongue all the time. So we do need school choice. That was mentioned before. And we're working hard on that at the state level. And by the way, it's the Freedom Caucus that's really leading the charge on that. And when the Speaker of the House stopped universal school choice from getting a vote, we made a huge deal out of it. We made the motion to try to get that out of the Speaker's drawer. And when he wouldn't let us do that, and then the other legislators voted with him to keep it in the drawer, you know, we took that national. And we tweeted it out, and we expanded that out, and about 3.5 million people saw what the Speaker of the House in the state of Wyoming is doing to school choice. And it gave Wyoming a real black eye, which came directly from that man. And so we're putting the blame right where it belongs. So I encourage you to pay attention to what the Wyoming Freedom Caucus is doing. We're really pushing back on all this stuff at the state level. And if you watch what we're doing, we're having town halls once a week. Wednesday night, we're having one on the books in the libraries. It's not just happening here. We're well ahead of several other communities, and we're being an example to other communities. But this is happening statewide, and it's not just our public libraries, it's also our high school libraries. I think if we look deep enough, we'll probably find out junior high libraries are going to have problems too.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we brought bills this last session to change it so that librarians and teachers were no longer exempt. We were blocked, we were voted down in committee, those bills. We'll be talking about that Wednesday night, so I encourage you to go onto Facebook and watch that town hall. I think it starts at 7:30 Wednesday night, and you'll find out exactly what's happening in that arena. But you can go back and watch our old town halls. We've done one on medical freedom. We've done one on the gun bills that are being blocked. We had an opportunity to get gun-free zones passed, and it was completely obliterated by the Speaker of the House. So there are other forces that we're against, but I want to encourage you that on the local level, that's where it really needs to start, and that's what you guys can do. And when Ben was up here saying, you know, watch these boards, find out when their meetings are, attend them, we've been working on that for some time. And we can talk about educating the general public that don't show up at meetings like this, but I want to remind you guys that when it was time to fight against the biggest military in the world, in the colonies, it was 3% of the people that were bold enough to take up arms. And they had their neighbors all around them were saying, no, 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 I can't get involved with that. Some of them even sided with the other side, okay? We called those Tories. So remember, great things can happen from just a small group. And you just have to keep the willpower to keep going back and fighting for this. But I do want to encourage you, you know, it was Abraham Lincoln that said in his inaugural address right before the nation really was torn apart in a civil war, that in the end, we all have to love our country. And if those people cannot love our country, we'll never be reconciled. But the hope is that they and we can love this country the same, even though we disagree on some things.
Even though the Assembly legislation in Cheyenne State is run by Republicans, you guys are dropping the ball.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for just a second. I said this in my speech at the Trump rally. I've said this many, many times. In 2017, there were about 5 real conservatives that made up what began as the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. By 2020, when I got in, it went to 17. This last election in 2022, we have a solid 26 conservative votes in the House of Representatives. It takes 32 to win, but this next session is a budget session, and every bill, except for the budget itself, requires a 2/3 vote to be introduced. So no bill can be introduced on the House side without at least some of those 26 people voting for it. So now, the power that those 26 people had has just compounded for this next session. And the other side knows that. So your votes to get these people in, to get the right people in, they're very important. And so when you do follow the Freedom Caucus, you'll understand when we're promoting certain candidates that we've vetted, you'll understand what we're out to do. And so we can fix this problem at the state level if the people keep working towards it. Now, the Cowboys State Daily and people like Susan Stubbson are out there trying to besmirch the Freedom Caucus in many ways. And I'm the chairman of that Freedom Caucus, by the way, so if you read something that says, wow, you guys aren't as conservative as you say you are, come ask me, I'll explain. Because there's a lot of mistruths out there, just like all these other subjects you've been talking about. Come and ask me, I'll be happy to tell you, but more than likely I've already told somebody, and it's on a video somewhere, so there's a lot of information out there. We talked about sources. When you guys are gathering information, conservative sources in the state of Wyoming. Cowboy State Daily is probably the most prolific source of information on political events in the state of Wyoming. But they are left-leaning. You have to understand that when you're reading it. I'm written about quite a lot, and that's really pissing the speaker off in the Cowboy State Daily. But I'm always known as that extremely right, conservative, you know, and those types of things. They're always trying to get a little jab in.
That's a compliment.
It is, and unfortunately for them, you know, my base loves that, and so it doesn't hurt. But the thing is that they're trying to besmirch me on a regular basis. It's fine. So if that's your source, just understand that when you're reading it. David Iverson on Cowboy State politics, that's a very conservative political pundit, if you will. He's a right-leaning commentator.
Where is he out of?
He's in Buffalo, and that's a blog. There's a radio station that's on Saturday mornings, Jeff Wallach, Wyoming is Right. Supposedly you can hear it here, but I've only been able to listen to it online afterwards. So Wyoming is Right. So there's lots of different sources, and these are all growing, and they're following. And there's a new newspaper out there that's coming out of the northwest part of the state. It's published twice a month, and it's called the Wyoming Chronicle. So I would encourage you to subscribe to that and encourage them. They're a very conservative newspaper if you want to see it in print. And by the way, nationally, if you read a newspaper, you should be getting the Epic Times. I hope
Yes.
all of you are reading getting your national news from there. So those are all important. I'll try to keep everybody informed through both my own Facebook and the Freedom Caucus. We put a lot of videos out, we put a lot of articles out. And there was just one today that was published in the Cowboy State Daily where one of our members, Sarah Penn, wrote an article about the books in the library. So we are trying to stay up on all the current events. This is something that's very much irritating the establishment because usually this time is the quiet time. And most legislators go back and go to their jobs. We have full-time jobs, okay? And we're trying to I'm trying to get my business back up and running after being gone for a couple of months this winter. But we now, in the Freedom Caucus, have a full-time attorney working with us, and we are pushing information out all the time. And we're pushing on those, and so on the establishment. So we're making it very difficult for them. Yes, sir.
Does the Wyoming Freedom Caucus have a website?
Yeah, we do not at this moment. We just established a website for our PAC, which is our fundraising arm. And so that's Y Freedom PAC, WY Freedom PAC. And that'll give you a little bit of information, but most of the stuff that we've been doing is on Facebook and Twitter. So if there's a demand for that, we may go there in the future. Yes, sir.
Can that PAC support candidates in the primaries?
That's the idea. That's the whole reason we're doing it. Both those 26 that are conservatives, we need to keep them in because believe me, they're going to be coming hard after us. And we need to get 10 more. There's a new, what is it, 6 more and 24 is what the new slogan is, 6 more and 24.
We also need to vote out the 4 people that voted yes for the hate ordinance and then vote the hate ordinance out.
I wanted to mention that. Does anybody know what Heidi Gross's position is with the GOP?
Vice chairman, yeah, but she really, it should have been a recount.
And why should it have been a recount? One vote. She won by
One vote?
Wasn't there a recount?
And who controlled the?
I don't know.
Well,
I think
I will tell you there was not a recount, but who ran the teller committee?
Yeah.
The old guard ran the
Yeah.
teller
Guard.
committee. Okay. We probably should have, at that moment, stood up and
Recount.
said a recount. Yeah, that would have been
Yeah.
a smart move on our part.
By other people.
Do you think it's, especially her comments about the Constitution, is that worthy of censure or not? Scott Clem didn't seem to think so, but I'm not sure why.
Well, Scott Clem is not inclined to do it, then you're probably not going to get it.
Okay.
I think he's hoping someone else will.
Oh,
You should have those, you should have those conversations with
That's the
him.
impression I got.
You should have those conversations with him, for sure.
And I don't know, like I want to.
Now, you guys do realize there was a book with 2 authors that was just discussed at our library that was paid by the state for this couple to travel the state and talk about how bad our Constitution is, right?
I saw that at the library.
David Iverson, the Cowboy State Politics, just did a story on
Flaws
it.
in the Constitution.
So the left in our own community, they listen to that. That's part of their gathering of information, and they believe that the Constitution is not a good thing. But again, when you have virtue, virtue leads to religion, and religion it depends on freedom. So you've got to have all three of those things. To keep freedom, you need virtue. And to keep virtue, you need religion. It's a golden triangle. Yes, sir.
Speak of that, about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, I got an offer in the mail for a free book. And the book was The Harm That Religion Does.
Well,
And
so I mentioned Susan Stubbs. She's an attorney in Casper. Okay, she just wrote an op-ed. And guess where she posted her op-ed? New York Times. So that should tell you something. But it talks about Christian nationalism. So her attack is on legislators like myself that talk about Christianity and how it's important in our governance. Okay, they don't want Christianity in our governance. They also that's what leads to this lack of virtue, which leads to people believing that it's okay to teach kids anything. You can have anything in books. I think we're trying to wrap up, so people can come talk to me personally after.
Absolutely.
Can I just add, we need people to go to the library to attend these book studies they're doing, everything. So there's more work to be done there.
Well, thank you for the work you've already done.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. Yeah.
Thank you for your sacrifice and everything that you and Sage went through. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's give him a big
Mark, you had a question?
Yeah, early on, John said we have to live and work with the other side. Do I have to live and work with Bruce Williams?
Somehow.
Somehow,
Some common ground.
somehow, some
We're all
way, yes,
Americans.
yes, we hear you. Well, just to wrap this up, and Lyle, come on up if you want to share anything. It's going to be a busy few years ahead, and let's get ready for it. I'm serious. We have some ground to cover too, and we need everybody. We really do. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and John Bear can't cover it all. I can't cover it all. You get the idea. And so, and thank you all for coming to City Council. Most of you were there speaking out against this. Some were getting a little more.
I walked out.
But anyway, so it's going to be a busy couple of years. The material tonight, don't forget, you can get that on www.americanpolicy.org. And I would suggest that each of you get a copy of this handbook, because we're going to have future meetings. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Walk between the raindrops on your way out.